Olá, hoje nós estamos aqui com a Jennifer Parker-Stanton. Ela é corretora há mais de 15 anos aqui na região de LA e também com a Annie Carolin, que é uma stager fabulosa, que eu adoro o trabalho dela. So, Jennifer, in your experience, na sua experiência, qual a importância do home staging nas vendas das propriedades que você trabalha?
Home staging, it's interesting here in Southern California. In the last, I would say about 10 years, maybe a little bit more, it's become almost integral to selling property. At least here in Southern California, and I think it's spreading across the country. It's almost the norm that almost everybody does it. And integral in the photographs turn out beautifully. It gets the buyers interested. It gets them in the door. Once they're in the door, it's the selling of a lifestyle because they are experiencing how they can live in a property, how a room can be set up, the textures, the warmth, the artwork. It sells more than just a structure, it sells a home.
Qual a importância do home staging para vender propriedades?
Our number one objective is to evoke an emotional response. I think that people need something to aspire to. And I think that when they walk into a house that encompasses an entire lifestyle, it's not just the house, but it's how they're going to live, where they're going to sit, where they're going to enjoy their morning coffee, where are they going to sleep. Is it romantic? It needs to be emotional.
Jennifer, quais são as etapas quando você recebe uma ligação de um cliente dizendo que quer vender sua propriedade?
The first things that would happen is we would make an appointment, go over and take a look at the house. And we would sort of do an overview of the property, see what condition it's in, how good, how bad, and what level of staging it needs. Does it need some cleanup? Does it need paint touch-ups? Does it need some handymen to come in? And quite often we work with stagers who will handle that work for us, which is helpful. And then we'll assess what kind of staging, if they're going to be moving out, is it vacant, does it need a whole staging, does it need a partial staged? And then we will supply the seller with like our top 2 or 3 stagers that we like to work with, who we think will do the best job for the property, and set up appointments and have those stagers come through and do their own assessment and provide an estimate. And typically it's a communal decision between the seller and ourselves as to who stages the property, of which Annie Carolin, who we're here with today, is always on the top of our list to call because we love her. And she's also one of those stagers who will help get a property not just staged, but ready to go on market. She's got such a good eye.
Annie, quais são os passos, as etapas, uma vez que a Jennifer te contata para fazer o home staging de uma casa que precisa ser vendida?
So it's very important that we see the home. When we see a home, we're evaluating the square footage, how many rooms are there, the logistical access points in both like the street and the actual home. How are we going to get in? How many entrances are there? We're also evaluating the style of the home, which will determine what kind of furniture we then bring with us when we get the job. So once we see the house, we take record of, we will take pictures, we take videos, and we price out our projects based on not just square footage, but how many rooms there are. Mm-hmm. And we present the realtor with our estimate. At that point, they've probably received 2 or 3 other estimates, and they have a dialogue with their client, and we are either awarded the job or we're not. And so as soon as we are, we then will go back to those photos and those videos that we took, and we will plan the job out, schedule the job, and then execute it. We take into consideration the style of the home and what kind of pieces that we're going to bring to best evoke that emotional response based on the home. For example, if the home is mid-century, we have to bring in some authentic mid-century pieces. It's important. The person who's gravitating toward that style of home, they need to see the furniture pieces meld in with that and give them that picture of that mid-century aesthetic that they are yearning for. So we take into consideration what type of home it is as well in deciding what the style should be.
And I would say, Annie, just to follow up on your point, is that you assess the property, you give your estimate and all of that, but there's a piece of the dialogue between the realtor and the stager, between us, where we can walk the property together. And sometimes we discuss whether a room should be an office or a bedroom, or what is the best use of a room, where's the best light in the house. And often you'll say, what do you think you want to see here? Here's what I see. So what's great about the process is it's a real dialogue. It's a real collaboration between the two parties and sometimes the seller, although the seller often will say, you guys know what you're doing. But the collaboration, I think, is what brings out the actual best product in the end, which is great.
Isso é o que eu sempre falo para vocês, que o Home Stager e o corretor, eles trabalham de mãos dadas, colaborando para que o produto final vá com a melhor aparência, da melhor forma para o mercado. Jennifer, os teus clientes são resistentes ao home staging? E se são, quais são os teus argumentos para convencê-los?
We're finding that it's very rare these days for us to have a client who doesn't agree to staging or doesn't even want to stage. Most of the time now, our clients are like, okay, so let's get some staging bids, let's stage this property. But if there are objections, maybe it's a budget, maybe it's another reason, we speak to showing them before and afters of properties before they were staged and after they've staged, and we can show them visually the difference and what an amazing transformation occurs. And we also can speak to the experience of having the buyers come through and say, oh my God, the photos were so beautiful. We wanted to come see this property. It was an area we weren't even looking in, but it looks like such a beautiful home. And then we also can explain how people react when they're in a home that is staged and looks beautiful. And most of the time the buyers are like, we want to buy all the furniture. We could never even imagine doing this ourselves. We don't have the know-how. We can speak to the emotions that they're experiencing. And we can also speak to watching how their emotions and their attention is grabbed by a home that feels so beautifully done, and how that translates to what they're willing to pay for a property. And almost 100% across the board, every home that we've ever staged or had staged has sold, and the sellers have made all their money back, plus a lot on the staging. The staging is truly an investment, and that's the piece that sellers here are starting to really understand, that it's just one aspect of what you do to sell your home, which is now a commodity on the market. You know, you would clean your inside of your car if you were going to sell it. You would wash it and clean it and make it look its best. It's the same thing.
Annie, como que você escolheu as peças do teu inventário?
That's actually my favorite part. In my entire business at Pride of Place, buying the inventory is my forte. I think we live in a very social media driven world. And going back to why I think staging works, which is that it evokes emotions and an emotional response, and it helps people understand how they want to live. Me choosing inventory very much has to do with that ideology, because I think that what Pride of Place does is we manage to very quickly create a home that is styled like the last Instagram picture you saw from a famous designer, or from your major box stores. We've got here in the United States of America, we have West Elm, Crate and Barrel, CB2. These companies, what they've done is it's this sort of very fast, resourceful way of providing and making accessible certain types of furniture that very much mirror high-end design. So now you can have it in your home, and in that same way that retail has done it, staging companies are doing it. We understand how to use different pieces that will create a very editorial feeling. And what that does is you're literally walking into a magazine spread. These aren't homes that are easy for people to put together themselves, but I think that my hope is that when they're able to come into a home that they might want to buy, and when they realize that, you know, the staging company did this and they did it in maybe 2 days, that they can have that feeling of, I think I can have this too. And that can make their lives better. Because I think that it's very psychological. I think it's, you know, you see a beautiful home, it's what you yearn for, it's what you want in your own life. And now you can see that it's possible for you. It becomes this portal to, I can live my life better. And this home can help me do that. So I love picking inventory. It's, you know, we don't always have the biggest budgets, but that becomes a challenge for me that I like embrace, because, you know, how do you get these very on-trend pieces without spending, you know, very large prices? So what we do is sometimes we custom make furniture. We like to repurpose vintage furniture a lot. I love to buy an old vintage chair and change the fabric to make it a little bit more modern. The juxtaposition between something old and then something on trend right now, and how that plays emotionally to people who then see it. So as the trends are changing and as they are evolving, we need to keep up with it.
Mesmo num mercado tão aquecido como o de hoje, você mesmo assim vê valor em fazer o home staging das casas que você vende?
It is a hot market. It is very fast moving. And you would think that staging isn't important, but it still is. Because you still have to get people in, you have to get them to the point where they want to write an offer. And the more offers you get, the more money you're going to get in the end. So it's still important to set the scene, no matter what, even in a hot market. It's not about necessarily like worrying, is this house going to sell? Because it will. But it's about it selling to the best of its ability, the absolute best of its ability. It's no matter what, you need buyers to understand how a house can function at its best. And so staging is just key. So basically what it does is it turns a house into a home.
How about you, Annie?
I think it's important. I have an interesting perspective because I walk into a lot of homes. I probably am asked to go on a walkthrough, I'd say at least 30 houses a month that I see. And so these are situations where a seller has consented for a stager to come in. So, you know, these aren't people that are not going to stage. They are going to stage. But what my perspective is interesting in is that I see what these homes look like prior to the staging. And it's absolutely necessary. I mean, sometimes you have a person who, you know, has kept a very clean house. They live very minimally. They don't have a lot of accessories everywhere. It almost does already maybe look like a model home, and I think that that's okay, but you want your house to present the best possible way that it can. And so, like Jennifer said, staging is sort of the most direct and efficient way to do this. Because when I walk into the walkthroughs, and don't get me wrong, these are normal homes, people live in, it's how we all live, but nobody wants to buy into that. People want to buy into something that, again, looks like a magazine. I'm going to have a better life now. Things are going to change. And I think that that's what we're selling, you know. It's a better life.
Olhando pouco mais para o futuro, qual que é a tua experiência ou a tua opinião sobre o staging virtual?
Well, I'm very strongly opinionated on this issue because we use this service called the MLS, where we see all the new listings come on and we look online, and I can always tell when a property is virtually staged and it looks cold and a little clinical, and you don't get the nuances and the warmth and the texture when something is actually staged in person. And it doesn't appeal to me, for sure, and I'm a very visual person, and it doesn't appeal to the buyers. And the other issue with virtually staging is It may get some inexperienced buyers to think, oh great, this is how it looks. However, the level of disappointment when the buyers actually come into the property, into the space, and nothing is there that they saw, they don't know how to take that image and imprint it in the room. It's now just an empty room, or a room that is whatever condition that it's in. They are not experiencing the textures, the layers, the quality, the feeling that you get from a piece of vintage pottery, from a velvet sofa, from linen, from the way that a stager has layered things and grouped things. And it's almost, I think, personally worse to virtually stage, because the letdown that a buyer is going to experience when they're in the property and it's not staged, it's not worth it. It's better to photograph a vacant home than a virtually staged home, is my experience.
Annie, qual que é a tua opinião sobre o staging virtual?
I think that Jennifer hit it on the nail. I think that one of the fundamental importances of marketing is consistency. So the problem posed by virtual staging is that now you think you've marketed this home a certain way, but the experience does not stop at the internet where the person is looking at the listing. They then need to visit the home if they're serious buyers. So to her point, once they get there, this house is now an empty, cold shell. And as good as someone's memory might be, anything that they saw online has literally poof, vanished, because now they're standing in this empty room and they can't remember where the couch was, and now they're pulling out their smartphone and they're not experiencing the home. It becomes a virtual experience, but they're standing there in the space. So I think that consistency is important. I think that what you see online is you should come now and see it in person.
Ladies, thank you so much for your time and generosity.
Obrigada.
Obrigada.